So my name is Jill Henke, and I am the Director of Operations at Gateway Pet Guardians, which is a shelter in East St. Louis. And the title of the presentation today is No Room at the Inn, Engaging the Public in Housing Lost Pets. All right, so here's our agenda. Obviously we started with introductions, but we're gonna talk about how the lost stray pets are outweighing our resources, or outweighing our open kennels and our available foster homes. We're gonna talk about why keeping pets out of the shelter is the absolute key to life-saving. It's our next step as we continue to work towards that no-kill goal of all of ours. How we can support finders every step of the way, and focusing on what we can do versus what we can't do. We're going to overcome objections, and we're going to talk about the power of finder to foster, because that's really what we're talking about here today. All right, so a little bit of an introduction for our organization. As I mentioned, we work in East St. Louis. If you Google us, we are the most dangerous city in America. The median income is around $20,000 a year, 95% African American, 43% live below the poverty line. We represent every urban area in our country, right? We're no different. We opened the largest pet resource center in our region in 2020 to address the pet resource desert that plagues our region. Our intake is about 1,300 pets, but we touch closer to 5,000 through our public services, which includes our pet retail store, our grooming salon, our public vet clinic, free spay neuter program, TNR, community outreach, and our food pantry programs. We do a lot to help pets stay with their people. We are a shelter with no government contract. And our mission is listed here, and I think the key thing when I think about what we're going to talk about regarding finders to fosters is our goal is to champion a thriving pet welfare community. Like, what does that mean to us? And I think that that'll get flushed out a little bit in the presentation today. So this is what we're working with right now. Our total intake is higher than our municipal shelter. So we are intaking far more animals in our municipal shelter. And for the area that we serve, we are intaking 87% of all strays. So for our service area, the 6 large zip codes that we serve, we're taking in 87% of all strays directly, meaning they never touch our municipal shelter. We're also intaking 98% of all owner surrenders directly. So we're carrying a heavy load. Many people ask why we take in strays. Why are we in the business of strays if we don't have the contract, if we're not getting paid to do it? Like, why in the world would you take on that burden? And the answer is back to my mission, right? I can't have a thriving pet welfare community if there's packs of roaming dogs roaming in the most vulnerable parts of our community. I can't achieve my mission if I'm not picking up stray animals and preventing them from getting injured, preventing them from getting hit by cars. So we're really doing this in response to what the public is asking us for. There's a need, and we're trying to fill it the best way we can. So how many of you can identify with this right now? We're drowning, right? I know everybody is. I can absolutely empathize with the high volume of intake needs out there. It is as tough as it's ever been. I've been heavily involved in animal welfare for 20 years. It feels as hard as it's ever felt. So there's more animals that need our help than we actually have space for, and it just feels like we're running in a hamster wheel sometimes. Sometimes it feels like we're not doing enough despite all the good work that we're actually doing. And we're working with far too little resources and performing miracles every single day despite that lack of resources, right? We just figure out ways to get it done. But really the no room at the inn part of this, we only got good at figuring out this finder to foster thing when we literally had no other options, right? When it literally came down to our next decision being, I guess we go to the back and choose somebody to euthanize in order to open up a kennel space. That's when we started really getting good at finders to fosters. We had animals in bathrooms and offices. We had them everywhere, and there was literally nowhere else to go, and yet animals were still walking in the front door, absolutely needing a place to stay temporarily. So keeping pets out of the shelters is a key component of our life-saving mission. We're still operating at a 96, 97% live release rate, but keeping pets out of the shelter is the way that we're doing it. Yes, we're taking in more, yes, we're adopting out more, but it's taking longer. And so keeping pets out of the shelter is absolutely critical to what we're doing, and it has to be something that we all fundamentally believe in. I often hear from municipal shelters, I'm required to take in strays. I'm not telling you you're not taking them in, I'm telling you you're not housing them right off the bat. And that's the big difference, right? There are ways to do this, and I understand red tape and some of the things that would have to happen in your communities in terms of policy in order to make this happen, but I do believe it can be done anywhere. So I always say if you can do it in East St. Louis, you can do it anywhere, right? We work in a really tough environment, and we're able to make this work. You know, shelter space needs to be reserved for our sick, injured, fragile, emaciated, dangerous pets. If we're letting healthy, fat dogs with collars on walk right in the door and take up that space, what am I going to do when the hit by car comes along? What am I going to do when the dog that was shot comes along? What am I going to do with that? So pets are, we know this. This has statistically been proven that pets are far more likely to be reunited with their family if they stay in the community that they're found in, right? We've got some work to do to kind of build up that narrative for the public, and it's our job to do that. Doing what's right is not always popular. I will tell you, we have a lot of confrontation in this world of we can't take your pet right now, but here's what we can do to help. This is not like, we don't hold hands and sing Kumbaya when we're doing this, right? It's not that simple, it's not that straightforward. But we know that these dogs, many of them are just lost, and investing in RTO programming is mandatory at this point, right? We cannot manufacture more kennels, we can't manufacture more budget for animal care staff overnight. That isn't going to happen. But what we can do is invest in RTO programming and return to owner programming and making sure that that's a priority within our organization. So this is the part where I go out. Uh-oh, Nick. Let's go back.
At tea time, everybody agrees. I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. It must be exhausting.
Oh, I went past the part that I'm supposed to be playing.
It's me. Hi,
I'm the problem, it's me.
at tea time.
I certainly don't have the voice of the folks at the opening session, but I think the important part to understand is we, as an industry, have created the narrative that you find a lost pet and you immediately drive it to a shelter, right? That's how you're helping, that's how you're a hero. And so in that regard, we are the problem, right? We condition the public to believe that that's how they help. And now it's our job to decondition them to that idea, right? We have to do this. We have to start telling people, even though it's hard and even though there's confrontation involved, we have to start setting that expectation from the very beginning with folks. And this is a lot easier for us in some capacity because we get a lot of phone calls, right? And that's a great way to immediately tell people what's going to happen when they bring that pet up to the shelter. We're going to scan it. Here's all the things we're going to do, but what we're not going to be able to do today is take that pet from you and put it into a kennel because I don't have any open kennels, right? So that setting that expectation as early on as you can is going to make less confrontation when you're standing there with that pet finder. Listening, I will tell you, my intake and diversion manager, the thing that she's the master at these conversations, what she does so well is she listens and she takes the time to listen. I've seen her up there for 20 minutes just letting somebody just rattle off what they needed to tell her. And she's interested and she's engaged while they do it. She shows gratitude and empathy. You know, they're there to help. They wouldn't have picked up an animal and drove it to the shelter if they didn't have the desire to help this animal. And it's our job to sort of explain to them how they're going to be able to help us do that. We need to be honest and transparent. You know, I've absolutely said to people in conversations, I would have to walk to the back of my shelter and choose an animal to euthanize in order for me to take that pet from you today, and I'm not willing to do that. I'm a no-kill shelter, and that does not align with my mission, right? You have to be willing to be honest and transparent about what that actually is going to look like. Under-promise and over-deliver. Don't say, I can take this dog for you within 48 hours if you know you're not going to be able to take that dog from them within 48 hours. I try not to make a time commitment, right? I try not to say, well, in 7 days or in 4 days, or I try not to do that. However, that is a lever that I will use as the conversation gets a little bit more elevated and they're getting more frustrated. That is a tool I'll whip out and say, I promise you in 48 hours or 72 hours, I'm gonna have a space, and then I have to make it happen. But I don't do that on a regular basis because, as you all know, we don't know what's walking in our door next. We don't get to predict it, right? I don't know how many emergencies are going to come in the next 48 hours, even though I promised you I was going to take that fat, healthy dog with a collar from you within 48 hours, right? So those are the things that I think really help when we get ready to start having these actual conversations. And really focus on what we can do versus what we can't do. We know that if they drove them to the shelter with the expectation of us housing that pet, that that's really what they want, but that's not what we can do, right? For me to maintain my live release rate and for me to make sure that I'm leaving shelter space open for the most vulnerable pets in my community, I can't do what they want to do, but I'm going to focus on what I can do to help support them. So supporting the finder every single step of the way. This is what we have to do to make Finder to Foster programming work. So this what to do if you find a lost pet is a graphic and a flyer that we circulate everywhere, right? We see a post on the Lost Found pages on social media. We have staff and volunteers immediately posting this graphic. But I want to dig into this a little bit more, right? I mean, I think that people are just unsure of what to do next, and they just need us to tell them what to do sometimes. So obviously, I think at this point, everybody is hopefully willing to scan a pet for a microchip for somebody that found a pet. That's pretty easy. I've seen lots of creative folks that even have like a scanner tied to their building that is tethered to their building that people can come do after hours. I've seen people go to great lengths to make scanning for a microchip easy. We've gifted them to our police departments in our area. I mean, there's many, many ways to go about making scanning for a microchip possible. We even go sometimes for people that don't have transportation, we'll go to their house and scan for them during our community outreach effort. So there's so many ways to support the pet finder in this stage. We make sure to assist them with submitting our lost found pet form. I don't know what that looks like in everybody's community, but in ours, there's a St. Clair County lost and found pet form, and that form gets shared with all the rescues in the community. All the shelters, all the rescues in our county get that report, so that way if that animal shows up at their shelter, we should all be referencing that list to make sure that the animal wasn't reported as lost and now we have that found animal in front of us, right? So, but helping people do that, let's not underestimate people's technical skills. Yes, it's just a Google form, and for many of us, that's no big deal, but some people don't have access to a computer or a device. Some people just aren't that tech savvy. Some people can't read and write. Let's help people and offer them that assistance, and we do that by just having a computer in the very front of our lobby. The second they say, I found a pet, I need help, we're short-staffed like everybody else. We say, start filling out this form and I'm gonna be back to you, and that gives them an action step. Now, sometimes they need us to fill out the form for them, and then we make sure that we're able to do that. Get good photos, right? We're gonna wanna share this pet somewhere, somehow, in order to get them reunited, and we know that good photos do that. So again, you can't always expect that the finder is going to have the newest iPhone or Android and going to be able to take that clear, great picture that's going to end up on your flyer to get posted all around. So take any barrier out of the way for that pet finder to get that animal back home. We also print and laminate found flyers for them, and we give them the tape. Seems silly, right? Like, oh my gosh, how much more do you have to do for them? But I don't know if you've printed color flyers lately. They're expensive, really expensive. And for especially working in a low-income community, nobody is going to do that on their own. They're not going to go do that on their own. So we literally print and laminate found flyers for them, so for them to go take and hang up in the area where they found the pet. Usually it's close to their home or close to where they work, so it's not so out of their way. In situations where let's just say they're not physically able to do that, we will actually send our outreach team out and hang flyers for them, right? It's such an important part of getting animals back to their people, especially in a low-income community that's not as savvy, may not have internet in their home, may not understand the 8 million lost and found pages that we have and where you should be posting and where you should be looking. So we're trying to take all of that, barrier away from them and do that for them when it makes sense. We actually share the found flyers on our local social media sites for them. Again, there's 8 million. We kind of know the ones that are most effective, monitored, et cetera. So we're doing that for them. We create the found flyer, and then we are also posting it on social media for them. And then we immediately have them fill out the foster application, right? They're gonna have to go home with this animal. We're gonna talk about how we get them to do that still, don't worry. But that's where our liability waiver is built in. I always hear that, well, isn't there liability if you didn't take the animal and it goes home and it murders their babies and their dogs? And it's like, yeah, but I have a waiver for that, right? I'm gonna cover that when they fill out my foster application. They're gonna hit that liability waiver in that step. By the way, that's actually never happened. Nobody's ever been injured or murdered with taking home a stray dog that they found. And then we provide them with all the supplies that they're gonna need to care for that pet. Whatever it is, we got it, right? We've got food, we've got crates, we've got collars, we've got leashes, we've got bowls, we've got toys, we've got everything that they can possibly need. It should not cost them anything to take this pet back home with them and hold on to it for a couple days. And then Capstar. People hate fleas. That is the number one reason people are like, I don't know if this thing has fleas. Great. Capstar, you know, that kills everything within anything live with 1 hour. And then I'm going to give you flea preventative to make sure those fleas don't come back. Because I'm actually hoping that you're going to keep this dog more than a couple days. And you're going to actually end up fostering it permanently for me. That's my end goal. I mean, outside of finding the owner, of course. But people care about fleas. Let's eliminate that problem for them. Schedule intake and vetting and grooming if needed ASAP. In some cases, they're like, this dog doesn't have any shots. I might be able to make that happen right at that moment in order for them to take that pet right back out the door with them. If that's a hang up, if that is something that's really, really, really they're hung up on, I might be able to do that same day and get them to take that pet back home. And if grooming is needed, again, we only offer this in cases of small, long-haired dogs. I'm not bathing every, stray dog that somebody finds, but if they need grooming, we're scheduling that ASAP, and we provide that in-house, so it's easy for us to do pretty quickly. We have to outline the next steps very clearly, and if needed, in writing, right? A lot of times people will call back and say, you told me you could take this pet today, and I'm like, I had the conversation, and I know I did not say that. I wouldn't have said that, right? So if you can't outline it in writing, great. Transparently, that rarely happens with us. We're too busy to sit down and write down everything, but making sure that we're verbally communicating what they can expect from us, what's going to happen while they've got that pet in their care, the things that we're doing to work on getting that pet back home and getting them out of their care as soon as possible. And then we treat them like a normal foster so they know how to get a hold of us. That's the other thing. I don't want them to feel like they're out on an island all by themselves. So as you can kind of see here, the graphic, that is part of we call it our foster brochure. It's a trifold that we give out to everybody. But it's got every single way that you need to contact us. And they have the access to that as the finder. We outline what an emergency is. You can call us if the dog is dying. You can call us if the dog gets lost. Give us a call. We can help support that as well. So we want to make sure that they know how to get back a hold of us so that they don't feel like I'm just burdening them with this animal. I want them to know that they're getting the full amount of support that my organization can provide. And if they're able to reunite the pet, celebrate it like it's 1999. Like, I want them there taking a picture with the family that's crying, getting reunited with the pet. I want them to feel what we feel when we get to reunite pets with their families. So including them in that process when you can is really a cool step if you are able to locate that owner. All right. My favorite part of the presentation is the interactive part. So I'm going to ask a question, and so for this session, we don't have the toss around box. Everybody is going to have to go to the middle microphone here. But I'd like to hear from you guys. If you're currently trying to transition finders to fosters currently, or you're anticipating doing this, what objections do you hear most frequently? What are people saying to you at that moment? All right, have to go to the microphone.
What if he doesn't get along with my other dogs or cats at home?
Yes, that is a concern, right? In that scenario, I'm always encouraging people to keep separate if they can, right? A bathroom, and I think that's just informing people. Don't feel bad if you have to keep this dog crated for 22 hours a day while we wait to see if we can locate an owner. Because that's what the dog would be in our shelter anyway, right? And really being that transparent with them. Like, people feel bad, they want to help this animal, and then they're worried that the care that they're providing is subpar. It's not subpar, right? Keeping that animal in your laundry room or your utility room or in your unfinished basement. People are always like, I only have an unfinished basement. It was like the dog was going to get smushed on the highway when you picked it up. The unfinished basement is great. Like, that's a great solution. And it's just prescribing that peace of mind to people that what they're doing is going to be enough. What they're doing is actually helping, not harming that pet. Next question.
I actually have like two.
Yeah.
First one is usually, I saved this animal. You guys are supposed to help us. This is inhumane.
Yeah. I'm in a luxury position of not having the contract in this particular situation. So I don't have to take anything. We work on a high intake, managed intake model. And I explain to them, like, I know you want to help this animal. I want to help this animal. Again, my commitment is to a no-kill community, and I literally have no space to take this animal to. I would have to literally go in the back and choose an animal to say goodbye to in order to open up a kennel space. I know you don't want that. I certainly don't want that. So I'm gonna do everything I can to make this as seamless as possible for you, but I can't take the dog today. I can't take the dog today.
The second one that we run into might just be specifically because of our facility location. We're in North Miami. So a lot of folks, I've got a flight in 4 hours, or I am not from this country and I'm here for 5 days.
Yes, we get a lot of, I'm on my way to the airport, or I'm a truck driver just passing through town. That's hard. I mean, admittedly, that one is a bit tougher for me. I mean, if I absolutely can't take the animal, if I'm literally, because I'm saying this to every single person, and I might have one kennel open in the back, right? I might have one, but I'm anticipating 10 people asking for that kennel today, so I'm just automatically in my diversion mode. So I'm gonna, at the end of the day, if I think they're literally just gonna go dump the dog back on the highway, I'm gonna take the animal. But I'm also talking to them, like they're always on their way to work, right? It's always the most inconvenient time, and I'm like, can you post on your social media? Can you see if any of your friends and family can help it? If I physically can't take that animal in the moment, I'm not stacking a crate on top of another crate in order to put that animal in there. I don't believe in that, stretching our capacity for care to that level. So I tell them, like, when they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? And I was like, well, I can't take the animal, and if you can't take it, what do you think your next steps are? A lot of times they're saying, well, do you want me to just go put it back where I found it? I don't know. I hate to tell you to do that. Dumping an animal is illegal, but I also don't have a solution for you, right? So, it puts that onus back on the owner. You just want me to dump it? I almost never say those words, right? Because they get thrown around back at you on social media. I try to get them to say it, and then when they do say it, say, again, here's another list of rescues that you can call. Here's all the other things you can do. Frankly, I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but you're probably wasting your time calling them because I know everybody's at capacity. Here's your open intake shelters that you can walk in any time. They're not super close and convenient to here, but that is another option for you. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to walk in the back and make that decision to end an animal's life just to save the one in front of me. And so I have to relay that to them as confidently as I can. What other objections are you hearing?
Hi. I didn't have an objection, but I did want to ask, how have you been able to utilize the people that are coming in for your Finder program? Have you been able to recruit them as ambassadors to kind of alleviate some of that work from your staff doing this?
Absolutely, and I'm going to touch on this on one of the last slides on why this is valuable, not just for this one animal in front of us, but how this Finder to Foster can become so much more for you as an organization, and we've seen it time and time again. So I'm going to touch on that in more detail toward the end.
I live in an apartment, and my landlord won't let me have pets.
Yeah, tough. But some of the things I like to say is that, do you know anybody in your apartment in your complex that actually still has pets? A lot of times the answer is yes, and I'm not asking you to keep them forever, right? I'm not saying forever. I say things like, how often does your management company do rounds and come to your apartment? There's things that I try to do to offset that, and a lot of times that's when I'm promising them that very short time frame, 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever that ends up being. That's when I'm giving them an actual out, because I know that, especially in our community, finding affordable housing is impossible. Literally, it's so hard to find pet-friendly, or not even take pet-friendly out of it. Finding affordable housing is so hard, and I don't want to put people in a position to potentially lose that or jeopardize that. I hope that in the event, and I always say, if your landlord catches you, have them call me and I'll explain what we're doing, right? And I've had it happen once, where the landlord's like, these people say that they're only going to keep the dog for 3 days and then you're going to take it. I'm like, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I was like, and I kind of go through the whole spiel that I gave the person in front of me, kind of explaining it to the landlord. And he was understanding. He was like, okay, I don't allow pets. I don't want my other tenants to think that I'm going to allow pets, but if you're going to take it in 3 days, I'm going to leave her alone. Okay, well, I'll take it. I won that battle.
Potential, but you're just trying to manage your save rate.
I'm sorry, say that again.
You're just trying to manage your save rate.
Oh, I'm just trying to manage my save. I don't want to take the animal in because I'm going to stay above 90% for whatever arbitrary reason that might mean to me, right? Yeah, I'm not just trying to. My save rate is important to me, but I don't. At the end of the day, that number doesn't matter to me as much as making sure that I'm finding live outcomes for the adoptable animals in my care. And if for me to take that animal from you right now would mean I'd have to go choose an adoptable animal and end their life. And again, that doesn't meet our life-saving goals that we have in place. And if you'd like to sit down separately, I can walk through our entire strategic plan on where our organization is heading and how you as a community member can help. But it isn't all about my save rate. I'm not declining animals to take up a space in my shelter because I don't want to help them. I just can't help them with housing them right this second. All right, what other objections are you hearing? There's a lot of blue blinking headbands back there. Nobody? Yeah. I'll repeat the question. I think the animal is aggressive. Now, in that case, if the animal is demonstrating aggression in front of me, here's my question. How did you pick it up? A lot of times where I've seen this aggressive animal come in, it ends up actually being their own pet, and they're trying to get it surrendered because they know that my owner surrender list is even longer than my stray, intake list. And so how did you pick it up? Were you able to, it was nice and then it just turned aggressive, which can happen. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. You get in the car and then it's like, oh, I'm scared, and now I'm gonna start growling at you. But if the animal so that's generally where I can flesh out that it's actually their animal. Like, how are you able to get a leash on this thing? Like, it's growling and lunging at me, and you were able to just leash this thing on the side of the highway? Wow, that's impressive, right? Like, and usually you can flush out in them that, that's not actually the story. However, if this is just an absolute brave good Samaritan that somehow did round up an actually aggressive animal and bring it to me, I'm generally intaking it. That one kennel that I do secretly have in the back, I always think about what's the court of public opinion going to say, right? If this animal actually goes back out into the community and actually hurts somebody, and I had this demonstration of aggression right in front of me, I'm generally intaking that.
After explaining all that to them and they say to you, you chose this profession, you're getting paid for it, we're paying you by our taxes.
Yeah, absolutely. I did choose this profession, and I chose it because I wanted to help and save animals. And I think that you're here because you also want to help and save animals, right? You wouldn't have picked up this animal and brought it to me if you weren't in the business of helping animals. But at the end of the day, you chose to pick up this animal, so you do have some skin in the game here, right? Now you're kind of on the hook. I know that we've traditionally conditioned the public to think that picking up an animal and driving it to the shelter is the heroic thing to do. But if that means that I have to end the life of another animal here, I don't think we're winning, right, as a community. And the reality is we're trying to balance two things. The community wants somewhere where they can walk in and drop off a pet immediately, but they want us to be no-kill at the same time. And that's very, very difficult with the volume of animals that we're currently experiencing in our communities that need help. And so we're just consistently reiterating to them, yeah, I chose this profession. My goal is to help animals. But again, I'm knocking on wood. I don't have the contract. I'm not mandated to do anything, but I'm here to help. And I'm going to always try to go back to what I can do for them versus what I'm not able to do for them in that exact moment. This takes some thick skin, folks. These are not easy conversations, I mean, you have to be, what I recommend when you're moving towards this model is a lot of role playing, a lot of kind of what I'm doing here and with your staff. Put those hard questions on them. They're going to hear these questions. Let them fumble through it with you. Let them work out the kinks with you and your staff before they're actually saying these things in front of the public, because these conversations are hard. I mean, they're very hard to have sometimes. And again, there is a time and a place where you're going to back up and you're going to give and you're going to take that animal. I'm not saying nobody walks in my front door and I take the animal. And I want to clarify that. When I'm talking about finder to foster, I'm really, for our organization, talking about medium and large dogs. I don't have a problem placing small dogs in foster immediately. I don't have a problem placing puppies, kittens, or cats, right? I'm lucky. You walk in with an adult cat, great, we've got a kennel open. That is not a limitation for my shelter. So I'm intaking all of that, right? And that creates a lot of goodwill. So when that person that is aggravated with me goes on social media and says, don't go to Gateway Pet Guardians, they won't take any pets, I have other people saying, that's not true, I just took some kittens to them yesterday. You've got the community advocates for you saying, that's not always true. I know they want to help pets. I've had a more positive experience with them. But in the case of medium and large breed dogs, they just can't walk in the second every single time somebody wants to bring them to. They can't always walk in that moment. Other objections, what other barriers are people throwing at you? If you don't mind going to the mic, otherwise I have to repeat the question and I don't want to butcher it.
they use their children as leverage. So they're like, I don't want to put my child at risk, or my kid's allergic to cats. Like, this is just a whole thing. Like, why are you asking me to put my kid at risk? So I hear a lot of like concerned mothers.
Yeah, kids are tough, and my best response is, can you keep them separate? And it goes back to the, 22 hours in a crate or in your utility room is still okay care for that pet, and just making sure that you keep your kid and your pet separate. Sometimes I've even, especially when I love when they show up with the animal and their kid, and you're like, well, you got him here with your kid, but you're worried about taking him home with your kid. But sometimes we'll even bring them into the shelter and do what we consider a monitored introduction. Like, as I'm watching this dog interact with this child, I like the body language. Now, if I don't, I'm saying that. The dog is very, very nervous. The tail's tucked, the ears are pulled back. That's the language that tells me that. So I would definitely, you have to keep this dog separated from them. And if I see that, again, I don't get that opportunity often where I'm actually able to oversee that. But in the case that I do, it's a good way to kind of deflect that. But again, especially when they bring their kid with them, it's like, well, you put the dog in the car with them and you walk the dog in here with them, but somehow we can't take them home for a day or two. Like, let me try to work through that with you. But again, keeping them separated, and again, that's more of when I'm gonna give them a clearer deadline of when I can actually promise intake. But again, the whole time that I'm promising intake, we're doing all these things in the background and hopefully reuniting that pet, right? Those flyers are getting hung. We've posted on social media. Like, we've done all those things. If you've heard of, I know Lifeline in Atlanta, I love the term that the first 48, which is their kind of finder to foster program. Like, they talk about all the things that happen in the first 48 hours and sort of asking people to hold the pet for 48 hours. There's a lot of work happening, in that 48 hours that hopefully is gonna help us identify an owner. So that's kind of how I respond to the kids thing. I will actually tell you, I think, like, for me, and I don't know why it seems crazy, but the allergy thing is a little bit harder for me to combat. It's like I own cats, but I also have allergies to cats. And it's like, I don't want them to go into anaphylactic shock because I asked them to take this cat home. Again, we don't have to ask people to take adult cats home. We can house them immediately. But the allergy one is, for some reason, one of those ones where I kind of stumble more than I feel like I should. Like, the allergy one is a tougher one for me.
That was going to be mine, was just the allergy.
The allergy
I'm
question.
allergic.
Yeah, the allergy question is hard for me. It's very, very hard.
I have a question. We get a lot of, we're in the Dallas area, and we get a lot of people that find dogs. Some are willing to hold, some want the rescue to immediately take, even though they might be lost or somebody's dog. The biggest one, though, that's a hindrance is they are dumped. The chip isn't registered, so they might be looking, but we know, or they've called and they're like, we don't want it, we rehomed it, they don't want them. What do you do with those? Because then you're not asking them to hold it temporary. You're saying, and at that point, they're like, no, I mean, most of those people are in areas that are being dumped all the time. So if they were to take them all in, they would have, so those, I mean, that's a huge, and we're already at 200 dogs as a nonprofit rescue.
Yeah.
We're foster-based, no facility.
Yeah.
With a $7,500 boarding bill because of all these dogs coming back.
My team generally does not have the time in the moment that they're standing in front of me to find out all the information that you just found out, right? Like, the chip,
This is us sending them doing that, saying, hey, go do this. Then they come back with, we did everything you asked.
Oh.
Now they've taken them and then they've done it, and they're like, yes, we did everything you said. Now, however, they don't want them. We're in a rural area. We have 10. What do we want Minister to do?
So you've already promised them, they've already come to you, you've already done all the things that you could possibly do. We know this animal isn't going home.
Even the ones that don't hold them, yes, that's a whole different ballgame, and we're all in the same boat. But those that have done it, now they've come back and said, yeah, I don't really want that dog, but we rehomed it. What do we do then?
In all of these cases, at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is buy myself more time.
Right.
And I'm eventually going to intake that pet, right? It's not that I'm saying no, I'm saying no, not right now. So that is hard, and that's where I try not to give them, like, oh, in 48 or 72 hours, or on Monday at 1 p.m. you can bring the dog back. Because if I didn't make any firm commitments, I don't feel as pressured to take that animal in immediately. But sometimes their circumstances are where they're like, I've had the dog for 10 days now and I haven't heard from you. And that's one of the things I like to address. We always just give them our intake and a diversion manager's card, and it's their job to follow up, right? Because sometimes, like, I don't even need, like, don't even tell me. If the dog went back home, great. Like, I mean, no, do tell me, because I probably have it in my system. But I mean, a lot of things are happening that I don't need to know about. And so I don't have enough staff to say, well, we're going to follow up with you in 72 hours, and you'll hear from us. That's not going to actually
And
happen.
we don't do that. We say here, because we have a foster group or adopters, and they post on there.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we found this dog. Well, then I'm like, here's our list of resources. Go to
Mm-hmm.
our website. Here's what you do when you find a lost dog. Great. Well, guess what they do? They're not going to go to the shelter. They come back to you with that information. Now, it weighs on our fosters, but then I'm like, well, I don't have any other options. You have to go to the shelter because somebody might be looking for that dog, or can you hold it?
Yeah.
Because at this point, we can't intake it.
Yeah,
Well,
especially
now,
when they've had that
it's
dog for a period of time. I am trying to prioritize those dogs for
I mean,
intake.
we try to get them in.
You try, but sometimes depending on the whatever week that is, you've got 15 dogs that you're trying to get in, and because the people did the right thing and they found it and they fostered for you and they did all the right things and you're really trying to, but I've only got 5 kennels and 15 dogs. And it's just that constant triaging and that constant just begging for another day, another 2 days. How much time can you get before they have to touch your shelter? And it's a constant negotiation in a lot of cases.
Or you have a 50 animal horde that you come across.
Luckily, I don't have the government contract, so I do not have to take in a 50 animal horde.
But that happens to municipal governments. A lot of
Oh, yeah. I don't know how you would, I don't think that you can. So, yeah, the question was, what do you do in the instance where it's a 50 animal hoarding case? To me, that's not picking up strays. So I'm really talking about strays here. These were owned animals that were being neglected, and so that sort of falls in a different category for me. Obviously, you can't ask the hoarder who's just had their animals confiscated to hold on to them for a little bit longer. That's not going to happen. But in this case, we're really talking about stray animals.
I know you said you guys don't really have trouble placing like cats and like small dogs, but with it being kitten season, at a point my shelter had about 120 kittens 3 months or 5 months and under, and with them like being bottle fed or with they're still, or we actually had mama, or we had not their mama but a mama. Getting them in a foster so that they are not getting upper respiratory infections at the shelter or something like that. People saying, oh well, I don't have time to feed bottle babies or something like that.
Yeah. Bottle babies are tough, right? Because that is a skill set, right? I mean, you can ask your just average person to do it, but there's likelihood of failure in that case and kittens dying, and obviously that's traumatizing for everybody involved. I typically try to handle the process the same way, whether I'm talking about, again, I don't fall into this category often, but still focusing on what I can do. So in that case, I'm giving you all the bottle feeding supplies. Even when it's not a situation where the finder is keeping neonates, we also have what we call foster mentors that are bottle feeding experts. They've done it. So I'm able to immediately text that person that's going to bottle feed for the first time, along with a volunteer that's a mentor that has a lot of experience doing it, and connecting them to that resource. That helps a lot in the bottle feeding world. If we're just talking about kittens can eat on their own, I think the process is exactly the same as I'm going to give you a litter box, I'm going to give you everything. But in the case of bottle feeding, if you can give formula, if you can give bottles, we have a bottle feeding handout that we give, but also connecting them to a live person that is a lot of times all they need is that to build their confidence that they're doing everything right, and also prescribing that peace of mind to them that they're doing a good enough job. Because a lot of times it's hard to say to them, but like, what was the outcome for these kittens if you didn't intervene? And you can say, well, the shelter has to take them, but if I'm saying I don't have the resources to care for these bottle feeders, I don't have the resources, I don't have to take them, so I'm asking you to help us, because I want this to work out for these kittens and for you. But again, it goes back to just trying to focus on what you can do versus what you're not going to be able to do. And if you have that luxury of having super experienced fosters like that are willing to just have that relationship and work one-on-one with those people, it goes a long way in helping them. And then the things that I'm looking for in the kitten world is if I have a mama that comes in and she's only got 2 kittens, I'm calling them immediately and saying, we have a mama cat that I hope can feed. Are you willing to bring them in? As soon as I think I have a solution, I'm offering it to them. I'm not just like, good luck for they're day-old kittens and the mom got ran over. Good luck for the next 6 weeks. That's a long time to think about it. The second I think I have a solution that might work, I'm calling.
Kind of like a comment, but I'm newer to animal welfare, but now that people know I work, I've gotten like messages of people like, oh, we have the cats and stuff, and something that like, as the community engagement coordinator, I've really pushed towards like educating people, because like they'll send me pictures of the cats and I'm like, well, they look fine. Like, do they look thirsty or are they lethargic? And tell them to put like a flower ring.
Yeah.
Or even with the dogs, like, you know, it may not be how like we're caring for our animals, but like dogs don't have to be inside. So I'm like, you know, does it look like they're eating? Does it look like somebody's giving them water? And just telling them the importance of like them being in that area, because like you said, like, you know, if you pick them up and you drive them to our location, you know, they're not going to be able to track back to their house. But if you kind of just like keep an eye on them and we give like food, which is something we do when people come to our shelter, sometimes we do get messages that like those dogs, like, oh, the owner, we saw it on our next door or something. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's been really helpful.
I think community education is critical. Like, we literally share that graphic where you put flour around the kittens and you see if the paw prints came. Like, that's what you should be doing for tiny neonate kittens, especially if you have no idea who the mom is. Like, you want to save, you don't want them to die, which is why you're calling me for help. But I'm telling you, by you picking them up now and bringing them to me, they're more likely to die. So, and being transparent, again, sometimes I don't use the softest approach, but I think being clear and direct with what is actually going to happen. Like, my likelihood of keeping these 10-day-old kittens alive isn't very strong. Like, I don't have a great shot at this, and you're calling me because you don't want them to die, and I'm telling you, mom is their best option, and here's how we're going to kind of keep that pet in the community. To your point, we get calls where people actually haven't taken the dog. I'm sorry, where were we at? Did you give me a time? Okay. Sometimes people haven't contained the dog or don't have the dog on a leash and haven't driven it up, but they'll call. And we're doing the same thing that you mentioned. We're providing supplies. Again, that healthy stray that might have been under your porch for the last day or two, obviously it's going to need help. It's going to need a plan. But does that plan have to happen right now and require a shelter space of mine? Because if it's not sick, injured, emaciated, or fall into another emergency category, can I give you some supplies to help you maintain that dog until I can get to it? Now, of course, the dog might run away and not be there when I actually do have the space to take it. Hopefully it ran home, right? I mean, that's what my hope is. Or hopefully the owner saw it and grabbed it. There's other positive outcomes for that dog as well. Yeah.
Hi. I was wondering, when this works and people take the animal back and they shelter it for a while, how often do they find the owner and how long does it take?
Yes. I wish we had better tracking data on this, because we don't. I think it can happen as soon as the first day in some cases. I mean, sometimes Sarah, our intake manager, gets a text like 30 minutes after they just came up to the shelter and got it scanned for a microchip, and we printed flyers, and they're like, somebody was walking around my neighborhood calling for a dog, and it was that dog, and they got it back, so thank you for all your help. So obviously that's what I hope happens all of the time. Obviously that doesn't happen even remotely all of the time. So I don't know that, I mean, our return to owner rate in general right now is around 24%. We'd love it to be higher, but working in the community that we work in, that's tough, right? I mean, we're getting a lot of those same situations where we've located the owner and they lost their housing and they can't take the dog back. So, all of our efforts to try to reunite with the owner are going to fail, even though the dog is microchipped. But yeah, I don't know that we have data on it, but it does happen, and I'm going to share an example with you next about a really cool case where it happened. But like I said in the beginning, if there's any way to connect that finder to the reunification, you have just built a lifelong supporter of your organization. If they get to feel that emotion that the owner and the pet getting reunited, they get to feel that, man, it's powerful. And they're going to now understand why you asked them to do that, and they're going to want to be that hero. They feel like a hero in that actual scenario. And that's really the big thing. We're not going to get into actual role playing, although you guys have thrown a lot of questions at me that I tried to role play through. But we want to position them as the heroes in this situation, but we have to tell them what hero means to us as an animal welfare industry now, and not continue to let that narrative of you drive a pet 20 minutes away from where it was found and just hope that it gets back. We have to make sure that we're reiterating that to people. There's tons of data on it. You can hand out a flyer about the likelihood that pets go home if they stay within where they live. There's tons of ways to do that, but it is our job to change the narrative on driving a pet 20 miles away is being a hero, because that really isn't what being a hero means in animal welfare right now. All right. So as if keeping a pet out of the shelter isn't enough, and as if returning to an owner isn't enough, I want to share Juliet's story. So Juliet was a dog that was found. She was in great condition, frankly, when the finder found her. The finder walked into our shelter. We scanned her for a microchip. She didn't have one. And the finder actually kept Juliet for 277 days before we actually reunited with the owner. How wild is that? Her story was crazy. The people that owned her, their uncle was a drug addict. He sold the dog to somebody for $20. That person didn't care about the dog and left the dog. So it was this wild story, and they ended up, after 277 days, they decided that they were ready to adopt. They had decided they needed to have a dog back in their home, and they were looking for their dog, they were looking for an adoptable dog, and stumbled across their dog on our website. Like, how wild is that? Like, and how cool is it for that finder to be a part of that reunification after 277 days? That's a super success story that obviously we love to share. So again, these finders to fosters, I think a lot of people think of this as like a one-time transaction. They're only going to find one animal in their lifetime, and if you're lucky, you can sucker them into keeping it for a few days. Like, that's not how we look at it, and it's not how we see it, because as we've been doing this, we find that, one, a lot of times these finders to fosters, after they take the dog home, after we've treated it for fleas and they realize it's not going to eat their children, they want to adopt the dog. They're like, oh my gosh, this animal fits in perfectly here, which we allow them to do. Obviously, sometimes we'll even waive the fee for their service to us. There's a lot of ways we can reward them in that scenario. Sometimes these people, either they get the pets back home or we're able to intake that pet, but they become ongoing fosters for us, right? They provide ongoing value to our organization. We treated them right. We supported them well. They're coming back to us to help us more, right? That's what we want. That's how we build community support for our shelters. They're donors. I mean, in cases where the dog has been reunited, I've seen many times where they make a donation. Thank you so much. I can't believe you provided me all those supplies. I know it costs money. Here's a donation, right? They turn into that level of supporter for you. Sometimes people end up being volunteers. We have a couple of those folks now that are now volunteering at our shelter on a regular basis. They found a dog. They ended up fostering it permanently until adoption because they're good folks. But then they are now volunteering at our shelter. And then they're that advocate for you online. They're that cheerleader for this approach for you online. When they see other people posting lost pets, I've seen people on the Lost Found fight saying, reach out to Gateway. I found a dog and they gave me all the supplies to keep the dog and I was able to find the owner in a few days. Like they're now advocating for this concept of finder to foster for you, so you're not having to have as many of those conversations with folks. All right. We're getting ready to wrap up, so I'm going to see any lingering questions that you have. If you don't mind grabbing the mic for me.
We just had this instance. What do you do when your finder doesn't want to give it back to the owner?
Yes. We've had that. I'd be lying to you. It's always like small dogs, right? It's never like this, dog selective pit bull. That never works out for us, but we have had that happen, and we inform the finder of what their legal obligation is for that. We refer them to the police. At that point, it's a property dispute that is going to be handled through legal recourse. I'm not going to drive to that finder's house, but I do let them know, like, you would be added to our do not adopt. Like, there would be, repercussions from our perspective. You'd be added to our do not adopt or do not foster list, all of those things. But at the end of the day, I really can't force them to exchange that animal. And that's not any different than sometimes where we've had fosters take a dog home from not that they didn't find it, they just took an animal home and then they fall off the face of the earth and you can't get a hold of them. Like, that happens. So we don't handle it any differently. It's like, sometimes you can go the course of public shaming, like, who knows Kelly Smith? Here's her photo that I found on her Facebook profile. She won't give Fido back to these kind people. If you know Kelly, see if you can talk some sense into her. Something like that we've done in certain foster situations. Obviously, I don't love that. Bashing people isn't the way to build community support, but sometimes that works. But really, you're going to the police in that scenario. Any other questions? No? Thank you guys so much for your time and attention.